President Marcos will travel to Belgium next month, where the European Union and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations will be holding a summit. The two regional blocs are expected to discuss a trade deal. We'll talk about that and the Philippines' diplomatic relations with France, with French Ambassador, Her Excellency Michele Boccoz. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Very strong relations between the two countries over the past 75 years. How are both countries intensifying political relations?
Well, there has been a lot of contacts now. We are building up on 75 years of very strong relationship. And as you know, our President Macron, has been in contact with your President Marcos. They had the opportunity of a long telephone call where they looked at how to upgrade our relations and what are the areas they want to focus upon. They met also in New York in the margins of the UN General Assembly, and they will be together in the APEC summit soon in Bangkok.
And some areas of cooperation between France and the Philippines is one, food security. How can you help us on that front?
Well, yes, food security is one of the areas, and I think there's a lot we can do together. As you know, agriculture and also food security in general is one of our concerns. Our president has launched also international initiatives in that. So we're looking at creating a task force. We have created a task force already in Paris, working on the different issues on which we could work with the Philippines. Like one of the requests was around dairy production, for example. And our task force will be gathering all the best experts, and we will come here to the Philippines before the end of the year to have a series of meetings with your producers, with your scientists, with the different experts to work together, listen to what the needs are, and see how we can best be working together and cooperating further together.
It is indeed very key, food security for the Philippines, because we've been experiencing food shortages, particularly on key staples like sugar, rice, onions. I mean, very important staples, especially for the Filipino home. What about energy security? What can you suggest to the Philippines in terms of an energy product mix?
Well, we have, of course, a lot of experience in different kinds of decarbonated energy. I think this is something which is extremely important for us. As you know, we've had nuclear power plants for a long time now. For example, our electricity at the moment is produced 70% from nuclear power plants and 27% from renewable energy, mostly hydroelectricity, and only 3% dependency on gas, which proves extremely powerful at this particular stage and reduces our dependency on foreign imports, considering the price of it. So our electricity is the cheapest in Europe. So this is a kind of experience and a kind of mix we can discuss with the Philippines as well.
What can the Philippines learn from France in terms of nuclear energy?
Well, we can share our experience of more than 40 years in terms of what is the kind of environment you need to create if you're interested in developing nuclear energy, in terms of what's the regulatory environment, how to comply with the international regulations before you actually start on that, how do you develop also your research, and how do you actually look at what are the best solutions for your priorities in energy production. One of the characteristics of the Philippines, of course, it's an archipelagic state, and of course it's very fragmented. So
and we belong to the ring of fire.
And you belong
volcanoes,
to the ring.
earthquakes, and dozens of typhoons.
So obviously, if you're looking towards nuclear energy, smart nuclear reactors could be an option because they are much more flexible, they're much smaller. This is actually the kind of technology we use also to power our nuclear-powered submarines. So it's tiny, it can be smaller, it can be bigger, depending on what your needs are, and it is certainly much more flexible. But you really need to create the environment first before you actually move into it.
What about on the issue of climate change? Emmanuel Macron was in COP27 in Egypt. How can the Philippines reduce its carbon footprint, its fossil fuel footprint?
Well, obviously, the energy production is a big issue because at the moment, in terms of electricity production, Philippines relies a lot on carbonated coal or gas. So moving into decarbonated energy is very important. It can be renewable through solar or or wind energy. We also have a power company called Hydrogen of France, who's also started producing electricity from hydrogen. The plant is located in Zamboanga City. So we also have these different options that we can look at and share expertise and experience with the Philippines.
I mean, over the past 75 years of diplomatic relations between France and the Philippines, there are more than 120 French subsidiaries here in the country. Are they planning to expand? Are they planning to invest with more liberalized investment laws in the country?
They definitely do, and we have more and more French companies coming. We recently had a delegation of French companies led by our largest business association meeting with the Makati Business Club here and the authorities, and they definitely are looking at being more present and investing in the Philippines.
Which particular sectors, Ambassador, can we see more investors from French companies, industries and sectors here in the country?
Well, there are many sectors. I mean, there's obviously the energy sector, including energy saving sector, for example, but also infrastructure, but also, well, power companies, BPOs. I mean, it's quite a very, very wide scope of companies. I must say that the reforms that have been taken recently are creating a more level playing field, and this is important for our company's decision to come and be present, more present here in the Philippines.
President Marcos will be going to Brussels in mid-December for the EU ASEAN summit, and of course at the top of the agenda is a free trade agreement. It's been on the table for more than a decade now. Do you think it will move forward after this summit?
Well, there are lots of discussions that will be ongoing during the summit. One of them is also on the GSP Plus, you know, which is the current situation. Europe is going to move into the new GSP Plus. So actually Philippines getting into this new GSP Plus would be the first step.
What do you think are the key sticking points still, Ambassador, for a deal to be signed and delivered?
Oh, well, I think that the conversations are ongoing, and we have to make sure that, again, we have a level playing field, that, as you know, there's also a dependency on the environment, including the environmental conventions, including, you know, labor laws and a number of sectors, which I think are important into creating the proper environment for good business.
And there has to be consistency in terms of these rules and laws across all ASEAN countries. Absolutely. And right now it is still very uneven.
There are lots of ongoing discussions at ASEAN level as well, as you know, and of course then this will impact the discussions with the Philippines.
If there is an FTA between the EU and ASEAN, how could this basically benefit the Philippines going forward?
Well, it would be creating a model and it would be showing what it could be like, but of course it would have to go then country by country. There is a dialogue with the ASEAN. There's been, for example, an agreement on air transport, which has been signed, which I think is already opening the way to more and more negotiations and more integration. There are a lot of discussions around the area of connectivity as well, which I think is a very important sector. So there's a number of conversations that are ongoing with the European Union and the ASEAN, and that would benefit each of the countries individually, of course, according to their own system and their own capabilities.
Is France also looking at bilateral trade agreements, free trade agreements, like France and the Philippines and France and other countries in ASEAN?
Well, as you know, within the framework of the European Union, trade is devoted to the EU, so we keep some national competences and some we give to the EU, and trade is an EU competence, so it would have to be within the framework of the European Union.
Well, looking forward to more French investments here in the Philippines going forward. Thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word, Ambassador Michele Boccoz.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.